Well, good morning. This is Dr. Ron Bonstetter, and Bill Bonstetter will be primary presenter today, but chances are I'll be making some comments as well. Thank you so much for joining us on discovering how hiring for soft skills can lead to superior teams. This is a crucial topic and one that I think we need to all spend some time thinking about the implications of the different components of superior teams. So, Bill, let's take this away and see what we can offer for people.
Well, very good. I'm happy to be here this morning and share some of my thoughts and ideas with you. I need to say that most of the things I'm going to talk about really are based on research that we have done in the past on looking at teams, looking at individuals, and really looking at superior performance. And just to share a little bit more about that research, we looked at jobs and we identified the key accountabilities, and from those key accountabilities, we started analyzing what was the skills you needed to have to actually accomplish the key accountability. So that's where we're really coming from. And the next thing we really want to talk about, when since the title says hiring for soft skills, I really think that we should start thinking in terms of working with the total person. I know a number of people out there use assessments and interviewing and various things for selection. And in many cases, most people are hired based on experience or education. If experience and education always led to success, all experienced people and all educated people would be successful. So I'm saying we really have to look at that total person. And as we look at the total person, I like to break it down into 7 different views that I can actually look at and get my arm around. The first view that I'd look at is behavior. Behavior is how you do what you do. It's observable, and that's one of the neat things about behavior is that you can observe people and draw some conclusions on their behavior. Now, the other thing we look at on people is motivators, and motivators are really hard to get a grip on. You can live with somebody your whole life and not know truly what motivates them. And in fact, you can have difficult understanding your own motivators until you really are in a situation where you have to make choices. This is where you really determine what it is you're passionate about, things you like, things you don't like. But motivators is certainly a key component of what people bring to the job. And if you can attach their motivation to a passion on the team or on the job, it's going to make a difference on how they feel about coming to work every Monday. Education, again, is a key part. But think about it, if you're working with the whole person, and you're really going to base your hiring decisions based on education and experience, what part of the person are you hiring? Are you hiring their brain, their whole brain, a part of the brain? I just toss that out to be a little bit provocative here and think about experience, because I look at experience differently than most people. I first of all say, what are the skills that were developed during this experience time? And if you cannot define the skills you want the person to develop, then I'm not sure that you really are understanding the skills that are necessary. So just saying 5 years of experience without defining the skills that they would have developed in those 5 years is important. Along with that experience, I look at the skills. Now, the skills themselves, I'm just addressing it from a broad view, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail of some skills here in just a second. Another thing that people bring to the job is their worldview, how they view the world, how they see the world. I quite often talk about systemic, extrinsic, or intrinsic views, and we totally have a different mindset based on our worldview. And then the last thing I like to talk about is the emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is, again, another working with the whole person. Now, some people are good at managing their EQ and some are not. So it depends on the job they're at as to how critical that is. So let's take a look at really here, what are skills? I grew up years ago when hard skills were very important. You'd read the ad in the paper and they would say, "Can you type 80 words a minute?" If you can, you will come in, we'll give you a typing test, and they'd probably hire you right on the spot. We also had many more technical jobs that required some hard skills. But as we have moved away from tangible work more into intangible work, soft skills have become more critical in all jobs. And so that's why I really want to look at the soft skills. And as we move on, uh, I wish I could have renamed soft skills years ago, maybe as personal skills, because we call them competencies, soft skills, competent. We all need one thing, but I think we're talking about the same thing, whether we're calling it soft skills, people skills, competencies, and my preference is personal skills. And the reason I like personal skills is that these skills are developed slowly over time through experiences. And no two people can have this identical experiences. I know of no way to actually measure people to see if we have identical skills, or the one skill called leadership, if it's identical. I think it's that broad, and within that broad range, we as people have our own unique way of applying these skills to a particular job or activity. So as we move along, let's really now start talking about how these soft skills are developed. Many times trainers think that all we have to do is get a podium and a classroom and bring the people in and I can teach them. I want you to think about, could you teach somebody to be a team player by just giving them a book on teams? In sports, we have a lot of practice. And in the practice of sports, we're constantly working on developing more of those hard skills. But to give you an example, if you wanted to work on the skill of persuasion, the Toastmasters is a great organization to join and go give speeches and persuasive speeches, and you will get feedback from them. But just reading a book on how to be persuasive may not work. So that's why I'm talking about these soft skills, and I think it's really critical that you realize that reading and hearing versus actually doing and experiencing them is very important.
Bill, we really had that driven home, and we did the studies a number of years ago now at universities where we looked at the soft skills over a 4-year basis. And it was somewhat shocking, although not unexpected, that at 4 years at a major university did not provide any improvement in the work-related soft skills. So, they had plenty of curriculum during those 4 years. They had lots of classes during those 4 years, and yet they came in and they went out the door with the same soft skill, and there were very limited soft skills at that. So I think we've got plenty of evidence to indicate that soft skills really need to be developed in another manner.
I agree with that. And also, I'll point out, when we looked at college freshmen, we did see that interpersonal skills and teamwork were two of their better skills.
That's right.
And they actually had more skill in that area than most working adults. However, one of their poorest skills was decision making. Wow, and I think of those young kids going off to college with a brand new Visa card and no one around to look at their decisions. So we as parents, as business people, we need to think about these skills and how they really apply to helping people develop.
Let's talk about teams a little more, Bill.
Well, I've always liked to clarify, are we dealing with a team or is this a work group? Because a lot of times people say, well, let's do team building with a work group. And that isn't, let's clarify that, because a work group really needs to know how to communicate with each other. In other words, shipping and marketing and sales, they need to be able to communicate, but they're not necessarily a team. A team is a group of people that have been assigned many of the similar activities, and they must really work together. And I think the big issue here on teams, they not only have to be able to communicate, but you have to have some trust built into that equation if it's going to be a team. Now, if you try to build trust in the work group, you're wasting your time, okay? Because they just need to communicate. They're going to go in their own direction, and be able to effectively communicate things that are going on. So I always think that it's very important to be aware of that. And sometimes I talk to people that just don't understand that we need to sort of check that out before we start looking at what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, because you could go into an organization and make a crucial error thinking that you're going to spend your time developing a team when in fact that's not what you're working with.
Yeah, so I think that we're going to see a lot of things happening here in the future as we get our arm around these skills, and specifically, we need to as we go into more service jobs. Continuous learning is also another skill that I'll be addressing here, but think how important that is for many of the jobs today as compared to jobs 30 years ago.
Well, let's look at some of the specific skills associated with high-performing teams.
All right.
Communication would be probably the number one when you think about what has to take place in a team. So we've got to have the ability to have people truly communicate. And I'll tell you, just because people are talking doesn't mean they're communicating.
That's very true. That's very true. And we have ways of dealing with that, but today's not the day to go into a lot of detail on how to put on communication seminars and how to incorporate assessments into helping each other understand where we're coming from. And that's one of the keys to this communication, is to really start loving the differences that people bring to the team. Because if you bring in everybody that's totally alike, you don't really have a team. I quite often think of, wow, if we had 9 members of the Supreme Court that were identical, think about how that would impact their decisions. I think we need the differences, and the minute you have differences, now you got communication problems.
Yeah, and I love the statement you use. I hear it from you quite often, is that we have to learn how to love our differences.
That is really true, because that changes the mindset. And when the mindset is changed, good things start happening. But if you walk into a meeting and you say to yourself, oh, I got to deal with so-and-so again today, I guarantee you it's going to be a long meeting and maybe not a good meeting.
How does trust fit into an effective team?
Well, I think that trust is a major factor in team members, because as we look at the research here on high-performing teams, they work together so well, and trust is sort of the underlying chemistry behind that performance of all of them, because people are accountable, and we'll get into that. But what trust, you really have to be able to trust people to do what they say they're going to do. And if there's certain team members that have been assigned certain activities, we must have them perform that. And if they don't, then there's no trust. And so trust is really doing what you say you're going to do, and then this chemistry sort of takes over.
Let's look at the opposite side of this topic for a moment.
All right, yeah, the characteristics of ineffective teams. You know, a number of years ago, I didn't notice how a bad apple could actually impact a team. But today, one team member can bring the whole team down. We can have management sort of being a little bit lazy and not maybe solving a problem on the team, procrastinating. It'll bring the whole team down.
And don't think of just a team being 4 or 5 people that have a task they're working on. Think about teams being whole organizations in some cases, and small businesses, where one individual in that business can alter the mindset and the stress levels of the entire building.
Absolutely. Relationship problems. Again, ineffective teams have usually got a lack of communication, a lack of trust, a lack of understanding, and to put it bluntly, you may have people that are actually fighting and arguing. So as we look at that, we can also have managers. Management can actually impact a team. And again, I refer and recommend that management deal with issues promptly, not procrastinate, because the team, if somebody on the team is not performing, the team members expect management to step up to the plate and do something about it. And sometimes management won't do that, and it's impacting that whole team. And I believe it's also impacting the whole organization, Ron. I think it's a lot larger than what we think it is. But we really have to pay attention to that.
You know, I'm laughing, thinking, looking at your slides, Bill, because you're laying out really organizational stress and the categories that represent organizational stress. And I hadn't really thought about how it relates to ineffective teaming, but this inefficiency is really crucial. And certainly another component of this is working with each other, the colleagues in a building.
Absolutely. Without a relationship with colleagues, we know that people are stressed out on the job. So a high performing team really has to have that relationship built in and have friends. I mean, I'm talking about real friends that they enjoy having lunch with, have coffee with, and talking to. And even to take that to the next level here, job insecurity. Now, think about an organization that just in the morning paper, they announced they're going to lay off a bunch of people. Think about the impact that that is going to have on a team.
Yeah.
And if people on that team are concerned with it, they will be the next one out the door. This job insecurity leads to stress. Stress leads to lower productivity. This lower productivity leads to conversations. And again, we're eroding the trust issue because if people are concerned about their job security, how do you think management can solve that? They can't solve it by just coming by and saying, "Don't worry, we'll take care of you."
You know, I think about the years I was in education, and everybody worries about all these components that have to be in place for learning to occur, and they forget that there are two or three key things that have to be in place before any of the others work. And one of them is personal needs. And this concept of job security and insecurity is a personal need. And if you don't take care of those foundational components, everything else you do is a waste of time. Let's look at some of the key components to this.
Now, let's look at the importance of building the trust and the soft skills that are critical to that. And number one for me is personal accountability. When people are not personally accountable, when they don't do what they say they're going to do, when they're not a good team member, also they're not going to be a good leader of the team or a leader of anything. So personal accountability is a skill that I'm going to say I'm biased about. After looking at over 15,000 job benchmarks, personal accountability shows up in the top seven almost 100% of the time. There's very few jobs that personal accountability is not an issue. And so the key here is to understand the value of that and to really put it on the line. That if we're going to have an effective team, everybody has to live up to their promises. And I know you can have meetings and everybody makes notes of what needs to be done. But if they don't get done, now things are going to go down. So let's look at some other skills that lead to building trust. Interpersonal skills. Now, interpersonal is a broad people skills category. And it's one that I think is critical for so many jobs today because we're involved with people and the service related jobs. Interpersonal skills is something that everybody should have. And along with that, we end up with diplomacy, which narrows the field down a little bit. And we do have something here that we can read and learn about on diplomacy. It might be a little bit easier to define what it is. I know diplomacy and being personally correct. Some people have a problem with that, and I do because I don't know all the cultures that I end up visiting. And so diplomacy is something that we need to be aware of, especially in building trust, because when you're in a foreign country and you're not doing things, it erodes trust when you don't do your homework before you go visit them. Negotiations is another skill that adds to building trust, because this means that we're willing to talk, we're willing to discuss, we're willing to negotiate. On a team, there's the near right, the far right, and the always right. The always right doesn't work real well on a team at all. So we need to understand that, and negotiation skills actually work very well in building that trust.
This is an important one, Bill. This empathy, this concept of being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to be able to think through someone else's lens. is crucial to building trust.
I agree with that. And if you really can't empathize with somebody, you really can't understand their position that they're sharing. The better you can emphasize, and I think a good example is really put yourself in their chair. How would you feel if somebody treated you that way? How would you feel if somebody talked to you that way? How would you feel if somebody made decisions without involving you or informing you or looking at you? So again, empathy is another skill that we have that leads to trust.
How does conflict management fit into this?
Well, I think it's normal. Humans, from time to time are going to have conflict. And just to be able to resolve that conflict. And I know there's a big difference in people on conflict because some people take it personally and some don't. And we need to be concerned about the people that really take it personally. Now, they're not doing that intentionally. That is the way they deal with conflict, and it impacts them personally. And if you're dealing with somebody that says, hey, let's fight like hell and then go to lunch, let's get out of the way.
Actually, your example brings to mind, we had a secretary in our department that was very, very different than myself and the department chair. She came and shut the door one day because the department chair and I were arguing. We weren't. We were just having a discussion. But from her lens, was arguing. And she, that afternoon, came to my office and she said, how could you have had that intense of discussion? And then when the door opened, the two of you went to lunch. Mm-hmm. I said, well, we were debating different points of view, and then we were through, and then we went to lunch. So those are important components.
I had a meeting yesterday with a gal that's working with a lot of high school kids. And she pointed out how these kids are very sensitive, more sensitive than what I think I had to be or aware of that. And so conflict management, diplomacy, empathy, understanding these young workers and they're sensitive. I'll just put an issue out there that will get them emotionally involved. The issue would be, let's talk about global warming.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're not going into any detail, but I'm telling you, you can have people on both sides of that issue that are firm in their position, and science and technology and all that doesn't influence anybody. But anyway, conflict management is a key to building trust.
How about flexibility?
Times have changed. Multitasking and all these things, we all have to be more flexible today than what we have in the past. And understanding this, and I think you need to look at this flexibility, because if I have an appointment scheduled with you and all of a sudden something comes up and you can't be there, how does that impact our relationship? Okay, am I going to be flexible enough to deal with that? Or is that going to sort of erode our relationship because, wow, you don't think I'm important and something else is more important for me? And so we went on to that. So I think you can see how flexibility is another skill that really works well within teams.
Well, we've already sort of talked about teamwork as an important component to all of this, but it needs to be mentioned again.
Yeah, we mentioned that mainly because we can actually measure that.
Absolutely.
And if we can measure it, then we can figure out whether we need it and who has it and who doesn't.
Continuous learning fits into this because we're in a world where jobs are changing and things we do are changing. And so you have to be a person that has a skill to be able to learn when necessary to make those changes.
Yeah, so we've talked about a number of skills that I think are really key skills for all team members to have. And I sort of cloaked it in the fact that it would help build the trust, but it has more than just trust. And then we also have some other skills here that I think are important for we as people in the workplace.
Do you want to go through those just real quickly in terms of the skills that will enhance performance? This is a little different take on a set of skills. And so if we did that, persuasion is certainly a skill that enhances performance. We can go through these real quickly, though.
Yeah, but think of the leader in the team. The leader of the team has to be able to persuade the team to do something and go along that line.
They need a compelling vision.
Customer service. Ron, do you realize that we try to treat internal customers. When you have a team, we got to think of everybody in the building is really a customer of ours. I know traditionally we've looked at people that came in with a Visa card to be a customer, but internal service, customer service is really a key of an organization. Goal orientation, another one of my biases, but I like people that have goals, can define goals, and think about a team without goals. Okay? So goals can be an important part of that.
And leadership. We better have somebody that's willing to take the lead and provide, lead the parade.
That is true. And I have a game I play where we get a group of people working on a project. And I pass out 3 cards, an L, an O, and a P. If you get an L, you're the leader of the team. You get an O, you're an observer. You get a P, you're a participant. And I a lot of times change up the game and I'll give out 2 L's. So I have 2 people fighting for leadership. And I'll take a person who's very talkative and give him an O, so he's only an observer and can't participate. What I'm trying to do is take people out of their normal little environment there to let them understand how other people feel and think, because that's an important part of teams.
So is self-management.
Absolutely. Self-management is another key thing that can go along in enhancing performance. Problem solving is
and right there with decision making too. Problem solving, decision making, and actually some creativity and innovation is absolutely required.
Yeah. Now, the last one I've listed here is futuristic thinking. And the reason I've listed that last is that not all teams need futuristic thinking. Okay? Unless you're really on research and new product development. A futuristic thinker on a team, the team really needs to understand them, because futuristic thinkers are hard to understand. And the reason they're hard to understand, they're out in the future. They're talking about things that haven't happened yet. And our brain is built on what has already happened. And so we're making those comparisons. And so when you have a futuristic thinker, and the reason I really need to make a point here, we tend to drive these people out of organizations. And we need to understand them and keep them around, because they are an integral part, but maybe they don't lead daily operations so much as they really get on our strategic teams and start talking about the vision of what the future is going to look like.
Okay, let's take a look at sort of the science of self concept. That self-awareness is so crucial to moving all of this forward. So there are some critical factors in these soft skills that relate to self-awareness. For example, you could be pessimistic, and you need to know that. You need to know that you have a worldview that's seeing the world half empty instead of half full. And you need to really process that potential problem. Also, then developing skills, the development of plans so that there's direction. And it's a journey, but the journey has to have a focus and has to have a plan as to where you're going. It also needs to be personalized so that we're really able to put it into a context that makes sense to people and that they see where they fit. It's got to be personalized.
Well, and I like to talk in terms of, the goals and the takeaways. After a meeting, what are the takeaways we want people to leave the meeting with? And to me, that helps us sort of define these plans and understand those plans, because if we don't have something well in mind, then nothing may not happen.
That's right. And in the process, we form groups, which I think your slide really accurately describes here, clusters that have a common vision and a common need. So now, how about this last part of this, assessing these skills for all team members?
Well, here's the problem we have with some training and identification. We have people that have already mastered a skill, and we force them to attend a seminar or something with people that haven't mastered that. And so we need to really look at our team members and see what skills they have, and then use those teams, those skills to accomplish things, and then help build those skills in the members that need these specific skills. So it's always good to sort of say, where are we going to get the best bang for our buck here? And that would not necessarily be in teaching everybody the same thing, but teach those people that really need the skills exactly the very specific skills that they need.
In addition, we need to really look at the job and figure out if that job requires that skill. So again, teaching somebody a skill that they don't need is also a waste of time. So those are two critical factors.
Yeah, in fact, I've seen people that have mastered persuasion be in a job that did not require them to persuade anybody. And since you've mastered that skill, you tend to want to use it. And so you'll spend your time talking to people, trying to influence them.
What about this volunteer activities? Explain how this fits into the picture.
Well, I think we can build a lot of skills by getting involved. And since we learn skills by doing, let's volunteer. Let's get involved in some of the nonprofits, church activities, school activities, activities with our kids. Here's where we can have a lot of skill development come. In fact, Ron, you and I have played with various things for colleges to give classes assignments and have them working together as a group to accomplish an assignment. And there's much more to what's happening there than just the assignment itself. It's the relationship. It's all of that bonding that is taking place during that process.
Well, I hope you're getting the idea that soft skills are absolutely key to success. In this changing world, they're becoming far more important than they've ever been before. In addition, this provides you with the tools to have a work and a life balance. And it also has carryover to relationships, both on and off the job, that are absolutely crucial. We've talked about key accountabilities for teams. The key accountabilities is another concept that really hits home with making things work. And in the process, we need to clarify the soft skills that are really needed for a job and not just assume that everybody needs the same stuff. When we identify the contributors, tell me more about what this means. When you put this slide in here, identify contributors, what's that mean?
Well, I'm going to identify the skills that the people are bringing to the team. Once we've identified and clarified the key accountabilities, we now can look at what is the knowledge, the wisdom, the skills, the experience that is needed for the team to accomplish this. Now, notice this is a little different twist. We've always looked at key accountabilities for a very specific job, but if you actually define key accountabilities for a team, now everybody really gets clarity of what this team is put together for. And then we know exactly what we are to do and what we're not to do. So it all comes together as a nice package, but those key accountabilities are critical.
You know, there's a term that actually encompasses everything you're saying, and it's research. We think of research far too often as something that's done in an ivory tower and delivered to us. What I've heard you say today is that you need to be researching virtually everything in context so that assessing the team is really research. It's identifying what you have, what you need, and it's putting all that together in a meaningful way. Then you can compare teams, again, with research, and it could be done in each organization because when you do it in an organization, it's real to them and it makes it come alive.
Yeah. And here's what I will predict. I will predict if you compare a high-performing team to just another team, that you will find the high-performing team has more of these competencies, personal skills, soft skills. And I know that, but I have to transfer this to you. And me telling you is not going to work. But if you actually do the research, you're going to discover the importance of soft skills. And I have discovered that in distinct research projects. And it's hard to explain and define, but the leaders, the more you have success, the more skills you bring into the game.
Well, if you want to know more about this, we do have a call of action, and please don't hesitate to take a look at some of the assessments that really draw attention to every one of the issues that were presented today. So take a look at that and feel free to go into to that site and get a free assessment. In addition, you can also join Bill and I on Twitter and visit our websites for more information. We keep things as current as possible. And also sort of put on your calendar on a regular basis some of our upcoming events, such as on the 19th of November, we're going to have Secrets to Brilliant Business Decisions. So all of these exciting things are taking place. I would like to thank you very much for joining us today. And I always am feel privileged to have Bill share his ideas and his wisdom on these issues. So have a great day, and don't hesitate to contact TTISI for any of your problems and any of your questions.
Thank you, and great day.